The twin alien sisters sat quietly at the wooden table inside their stepfather's home. Their plates were empty, their eyes heavy with hunger, but they did not dare to speak. They already knew what would happen next. Their stepfather, a large alien with hard eyes and a cruel mouth, stood in the corner watching them. His voice cut the silence like a blade. "Out, both of you. You will not eat in here. You do not deserve the same place as my children." His words struck like poison. The sisters looked at each other. Their small hands trembled as they held their thin cloaks tighter. They were not allowed to sit at the warm family table. They were not allowed to taste the food that smelled so rich and good. Instead, they were forced to carry their bowls outside into the cold night air. The stars above shone bright, but there was no beauty for them. Their feet touched the dirt, the ground cold and hard. Around them, neighbors watched from their doorways. Some smirked, some whispered, some laughed. The shame was heavy, heavier than the hunger in their stomachs. The older sister tried to be strong. She lifted her chin and whispered, "We will eat quickly. No one will care." But inside her chest, her heart ached. The younger sister bit her lip to hold back tears. "Why do they hate us? What did we do wrong?" she asked, her voice so small, so broken. The stepfather's laughter echoed from inside the house. "Look at them, little rats, not worthy of my table." His children joined him, mocking from the window. Their cruel words carried into the night air like arrows piercing the sisters' hearts. The older one tried to shield her younger sibling. She moved closer, wrapping an arm around her thin shoulders. "Don't listen," she whispered. "We will survive. We will stay together." Yet even she could not hide the deep wound of being unwanted. A small group of villagers gathered near. Some shook their heads as if to say it was not their problem. Others whispered rumors. "They are cursed. That is why no one should care for them." The sisters heard every word. They tried to eat, but every bite tasted like sand in their mouths. The cold night deepened. Their small bodies shivered. They sat in silence, alone under the stars. The shame pressed down on them, thicker than the night itself. They were only children, yet treated like outcasts. The older sister finally lifted her eyes to the sky. Her heart whispered a silent plea. "Someone, anyone, please see us. Please take us away from this pain." Her younger sister leaned against her shoulder, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. The stepfather slammed the window shut, cutting off their view of warmth inside. The last image they saw was the family laughing together, while they sat outside in the dirt. The sound of plates clinking, the smell of food, all a cruel reminder that they did not belong. The younger sister asked softly, "Will we always live like this?" Her voice broke the silence like a fragile glass. The older one could not answer. She only held her tighter, her own throat too heavy to speak. But in the darkness, across the street, a shadow stirred. A figure leaned against the wall watching. His eyes glowed faintly under the starlight. He saw their pain, he heard their shame, and though the sisters did not know it yet, this night would change everything. It was the shameful night, yes, but it was also the night that fate began to turn. The morning sun rose, but it brought no warmth for the sisters. They walked to the marketplace with their stepfather. Their small feet tried to keep up with his long steps, but his sharp voice kept striking them. "Hurry, useless ones. Don't make me look bad today." The marketplace was alive with colors, smells, and voices. Merchants shouted prices, children laughed, and families shopped together. But when the sisters appeared, the noise shifted. Eyes turned to them, whispers spread, the weight of judgment pressed down on their shoulders. Their stepfather stopped in front of a stall. He pointed at the sisters. His voice rose louder so everyone could hear. "These girls eat too much. They bring shame to my house. They are nothing but a burden." His words were not private. They were knives meant to cut in public. The sisters froze, their faces burned as laughter erupted from some of the crowd. A woman smirked and said, "Why keep them at all? Throw them out." Another man chuckled, "Maybe sell them for scraps. That is all they are worth." The cruel words circled around them, louder than the marketplace noise. The younger sister held her cloak tighter, her eyes lowered to the ground. She wished she could vanish. She wished the earth would swallow her whole. The older one tried to keep her back straight, but her hands shook as she carried the small basket. Her throat ached with unspoken words. The stepfather enjoyed the attention. His grin widened as he leaned closer to a merchant. "I should have left them long ago. They are not mine. They are mistakes left behind by a weak woman. Why should I care for them?" His voice dripped with cruelty. The crowd's laughter grew crueler. Some pointed, some sneered. The sister's shame deepened until it felt unbearable. The younger sister whispered, "Why is he doing this? Why does he hate us so much?" The older one only pressed her lips together, afraid if she spoke, her tears would fall. A group of children ran past. One boy shouted, "Look at the shame sisters eating dirt again." The other children laughed as if it were the funniest thing. The sisters wanted to run, but their stepfather forced them to stay. "Stand here. Let them see what disgrace looks like," he ordered. Every word felt like fire burning inside them. The younger sister's eyes filled with tears she could no longer hide. The older one wiped them quickly, whispering, "Don't let them see you cry. They want us weak. Don't give them that." But her own eyes shimmered with pain. The stepfather raised his voice even louder. "Does anyone want them? Take them for free, I don't care. They eat too much, they do nothing, they are worthless." His laughter echoed through the square. The crowd chuckled and shook their heads. No one stepped forward. For them, the sisters were nothing more than shame wrapped in fragile bodies. But in that crowd, among the merchants and the mocking voices, someone else stood still, a human, taller than most, with sharp eyes and a strong presence. He watched quietly, his jaw tightened as he listened to the cruel words, his fists clenched at his sides. The sisters did not see him yet. They were trapped in the circle of humiliation, but fate was moving. The cruel words that cut them so deeply would also call forth the defiance of someone who would not stay silent. The market noise returned, but the cruel laughter still echoed in their hearts. The older sister thought to herself, "This cannot be our life forever. Something must change." She did not know that change was already watching her, waiting for the right moment to step forward. It was the day of cruel words, but it was also the day a human heart began to burn with anger. And soon, that anger would turn into protection. The marketplace ended, but the pain did not. The sisters walked behind their stepfather, their heads lowered, their shadows stretched long across the dirt road. The crowd's cruel words still rang in their ears, every laugh still pressed on their hearts. The stepfather carried nothing, his hands swung free, while the older sister carried the basket filled with food he had bought. The younger one struggled to keep pace, her small legs weak, but he never looked back. To him, they were burdens, not children. Silence wrapped around them like chains. Only the sound of footsteps echoed. The sisters did not speak. They were too afraid, too tired. Their throats were tight with swallowed tears. The road home passed by fields where other children played. Some stopped and pointed, whispering, "Those are the shame sisters." Others laughed and shouted names. The sisters tried to walk faster, but the stepfather slowed down, enjoying their suffering. "Keep your heads low," he ordered, his voice cold. "Maybe if you hide your faces, no one will see the disgrace you bring." His words dug deeper than any stone thrown their way. The younger sister could not hold it anymore. She whispered, "Sister, why does he hate us? Did we do something wrong?" Her voice cracked with pain. The older one glanced at her, her heart breaking. She wanted to say something comforting, but all she could manage was, "It's not our fault. We will endure." The stepfather heard her whisper and laughed. "Endure? You think you are strong? You are nothing. Without me, you would starve in the street." His laughter was bitter, echoing across the empty road. The sisters kept walking, their eyes fixed on the ground. Each step felt heavier than the last. The basket cut into the older sister's arms, but she did not complain. She knew if she spoke, he would only grow crueler. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in chaos. Days of red. The air grew colder. The younger sister shivered and pulled her thin cloak tighter. She looked at the glowing horizon and whispered, "Maybe one day someone will care for us." Her words lingered in the air, fragile and soft. The older sister squeezed her hand gently. She did not answer, but her silence was filled with the same hidden hope. When they reached the edge of the village, the stepfather finally stopped. He turned sharply and growled, "Go inside. Prepare the fire. If I find you resting, you will not eat tonight." His orders were like stones thrown at their small backs. The sisters hurried to obey. They entered the cold house silent as shadows. Their stepfather sat in the main room, his eyes fixed on his own children, who laughed and ate without care. The sisters moved to the corner, lighting the fire with trembling hands. The silence between them grew heavier. Each flicker of the flame reminded them of what they lacked: warmth, family, belonging. They wanted to cry, but they were too used to hiding their pain. As the night deepened, the sisters slipped outside again, away from the harsh walls. They sat under the stars in silence. The younger one leaned against her sister, whispering, "One day things will change. I know it will." The older sister closed her eyes, letting the night wind cool her burning heart. She whispered back, "Yes, one day." Though she did not know if she believed it. But across the road, in the shadow of the trees, the human still watched. His eyes followed every step, every tear. He had seen their shame in the marketplace, and now he saw their silence at home. His heart tightened. He knew something must be done. The sisters did not know it yet, but their silent walk home was not unseen. Fate was moving, and soon the silence would break. The next morning the sisters stood at the edge of the marketplace again. Their stepfather had forced them to come early, long before the merchants had even opened their stalls. The older sister held the basket tightly, while the younger one rubbed sleep from her eyes. Their stepfather walked ahead, loud and proud, as if dragging his shame behind him like a trophy. He liked people watching. He liked the whispers. Every cruel word spoken about the sisters made him feel bigger. "Stand there," he said sharply, pointing to the center of the square. "Don't move. Let people see what failure looks like." Then he stepped away, pretending not to know them. The sisters stood still, heads lowered, hearts pounding. Slowly, the market began to wake. Merchants opened their stalls, customers arrived, and soon eyes turned toward the two girls again. Whispers floated around them like poison in the air. "There they are again," one voice said. "Still not thrown out?" Another chuckled. "Their real parents must be hiding in shame," someone else muttered. The sisters tried to remain still, but the shame burned deeper than before. Their stepfather stood at a fruit stall, laughing with others, acting as if he were a victim who carried their burden out of pity. Then something changed. A shadow moved through the crowd, slow but steady. A human, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dark clothes and a stern expression, walked through the market. His eyes were not on the goods, not on the bright stalls, but on the girls. He had seen enough. Days of watching, hours of silence, and now something inside him had snapped. His steps were calm but full of purpose. The crowd noticed him too. Some moved aside without knowing why. His presence felt different. The sisters saw him approaching, but they did not know him. Fear flickered in their eyes. Was this another cruel man? Another voice to add to the pain? He stopped just a few feet away. His voice was not loud but clear. "Why are they standing alone?" The market quieted. The question hung in the air like thunder waiting to strike. The sister's stepfather turned sharply, his smile dropping. "Who are you?" the stepfather asked, trying to sound strong, but the human's calm stare made him uneasy. "I've seen how you treat them," the human said. "I've watched you shame them, starve them, laugh while they suffer." The stepfather laughed nervously. "They are nothing. Not mine, not my problem." The human's voice grew colder. "You make them stand in the dirt while you sit in warmth. You let others spit words at them, and you say nothing." People around them had stopped moving. All eyes were now on the confrontation. The stepfather raised his chin. "So what? You care about these throwaways?" The human looked at the sisters. His gaze softened just slightly. "No one is a throwaway," he said firmly. "Not while I stand here." The crowd gasped. No one had ever stood up for the girls before. No one had dared. The stepfather stepped closer. You want them? Fine. Take them, but don't come crying when they turn on you. The human didn't flinch. He walked up to the girls and kneeled, placing a gentle hand on each of their shoulders. The sisters froze, their breath caught. I'm not here to pity you, he said quietly. I'm here to change everything. The younger sister's lips parted, but no words came out. The older one's eyes filled with something new, confusion mixed with a tiny spark of hope. The stepfather scoffed and walked away, laughing, thinking the human would regret this, but the marketplace had gone quiet. The moment felt heavy, as if history had just taken a sharp turn. This was the moment. The human had stepped forward, and nothing would ever be the same again. The marketplace buzzed with silent energy. No one dared to speak as the human stood beside the two sisters. His hands still rested gently on their shoulders, but his eyes were locked on the stepfather who stood a short distance away, arms crossed, smirking. The stepfather broke the silence first. So, you want them? Be my guest, he said with a mocking grin. Let's see how long you last. The human didn't react. Instead, he stood up slowly, towering over the crowd. I don't want them out of pity, he said. I'm not rescuing pets. I'm giving them what they were denied. Dignity. Gasps echoed from those nearby. A merchant whispered, Did you hear that? He spoke of dignity. For them. The stepfather laughed, loud and bitter. Dignity? These two? They can't even speak without trembling. They are weak, useless, and ungrateful. The older sister winced. The younger one gripped her hand tightly. The insult still hurt even after so many times, but the human's voice rose, firm and clear. Weakness isn't born, it's made. You made them feel worthless so you could feel strong. The stepfather's face darkened. His pride was wounded, and in front of the whole market, he could not let that happen. You have no right to speak to me like that, he barked, stepping forward. You are not from this town, not from this planet. You're nothing but an outsider. I may be an outsider, the human replied, but even from afar, I can see what you are. A coward who bullies children to feel powerful. The crowd murmured. Some shifted uncomfortably, others nodded slowly. Truth was a heavy thing, and the human's words had weight. The stepfather's pride flared. You think you're better than me? Just because you wear fancy boots and talk big, you know nothing of our ways. I know cruelty when I see it, the human answered. His eyes burned now, not with anger, but with resolve. And I'll not let it continue, not while I'm here. The stepfather took a bold step as if challenging the human. The crowd held their breath. The sisters backed away slightly, fear rising in their eyes again. Go on then, the stepfather hissed. Take them. They'll cry all night, eat all your food, and bring nothing but shame to your door. The human didn't move, but his next words hit harder than any punch. Then I'll teach them to cry with strength, to eat without guilt, and to stand without shame. Silence fell again, heavier than before. The sisters looked up at him with wide eyes. No one had ever spoken for them like that. Not their family, not their neighbors, no one. The stepfather turned away with a sneer. You'll regret this, he muttered. They're not worth the trouble. But as he walked off, the human turned back to the sisters and knelt once more. You don't have to say anything, he told them gently. You've survived enough. From now on, you don't walk behind anyone. You walk beside me. The older sister's throat tightened. Her eyes stung. The younger one touched the human's coat, as if to see if he was real. The crowd slowly began to move again, but the mood had shifted. No one laughed now, no one sneered. The human had clashed with pride and won, not through fists, but through truth. This was not just a moment, it was the start of something greater. The shame that had followed the sisters like a shadow had met a wall, and that wall was a human who refused to let cruelty win. The human stood tall beside the two sisters. His presence was calm, but his eyes carried fire. The The stepfather's figure disappeared into the crowd, but the damage had already been done, and now something new had begun. The sisters stood silently, unsure of what came next. They were not used to kindness, not used to being seen. The older sister looked at the human with quiet confusion, while the younger one still held the corner of his coat, her fingers trembling. "Come with me," the human said gently. He didn't reach for them, didn't force them to move. He simply stepped to the side, giving them space to choose. The sisters hesitated. Their feet stayed still, not from fear of him, but from fear of hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break a person if it failed. The older sister finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would you want us?" The human looked her in the eye. "Because no one else did, and that's not right." Simple words, but they struck like lightning. The younger one's eyes filled with tears. "Will he come after us?" she asked. The human shook his head. "Not while I'm here, I promise." Slowly, step by step, the sisters moved toward him. And when they stood beside him, he did something that made the entire marketplace freeze again. He placed both hands on their heads, gently but firmly. "I claim them," he said loudly, so every ear could hear. "From this moment, they are under my care." The silence that followed was deeper than before. Merchants stopped selling, children stopped playing. The marketplace became a courtroom, and the human had just declared a verdict. One old merchant whispered, "Is he serious?" Another woman gasped, "He claimed them in public. That's binding under code law." The stepfather, who had not gone far, turned back at those words. His face paled as he realized what had just happened. He had mocked the girls one moms, and lost them the next. He marched back, angry and red-faced. "You can't just take them," he growled. "They're mine by marriage." The human didn't back down. "Then where were you when they cried in the cold? Where were you when they begged for food? You had a chance to be a guardian, but you chose to be a tyrant." A local enforcer, a thin alien in a silver coat, had been watching quietly. Now he stepped forward and spoke. "Public claim witnessed. Protection rights transferred," he said, checking his wrist device. "It's legal." The stepfather clenched his jaw but said nothing more. He turned and stormed away, this time for real, his pride broken, his control shattered. The sisters looked at the human in silence. They were now his responsibility, but more than that, they were his choice. He turned toward them and spoke softly. "You don't owe me anything. You don't need to earn your place." The older sister's lip trembled. "No one's ever said that to us." The younger one asked, "What happens now?" The human smiled gently. "Now, you come with me, not as baggage, not as shame, but as people, as family." He reached out his hands, and this time, they did not hesitate. Each girl placed her hand in his. The crowd slowly returned to life, but whispers followed them as they walked away. Not of shame this time, but of wonder. It wasn't just a human claiming two abandoned girls. It was dignity, reclaiming what cruelty had stolen. And as they walked together, the human shadow covered both sisters, not to hide them, but to shelter them. The road away from the marketplace was quiet. The dust under their feet rose gently as the human walked with the two sisters by his side, one on the left, one on the right. They were still holding his hands, not tightly, but like children trying to believe this moment was real. The older sister kept glancing up at him, studying his face. She had seen many faces in her life, some cruel, some careless, but never one that looked like his, calm, sure, but not cold. The younger one looked around nervously. "What if he changes his mind?" she whispered to her sister. The older girl shook her head gently. "I don't think he will." But even she wasn't sure. Her heart was still guarded, too used to pain to trust too easily. They passed homes where people stared through windows. Some whispered, others simply watched. No one had ever claimed shame before. No one had ever protected weakness so openly. The human ignored the stares. His focus was only on the road ahead and the two lives walking beside him. They reached a small house at the edge of town, simple but clean. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. "Come in," he said softly. The sisters hesitated. Their feet stayed outside the door, not out of disobedience, but fear. This was new. This was unfamiliar. The older one finally spoke. "Are we allowed to go in?" The human turned, surprised by the question. "Of course, you live here now." The younger sister took a tiny step forward, then paused again. "Will you shout at us if we break something?" The human's face softened with sadness. He knelt down and said, "You're not here to be punished. You're here to heal." Slowly they stepped inside. Their eyes scanned the room. 2 beds, warm blankets, food on the table. They had never seen so much safety in one place. The human pointed to the beds. "Those are yours. The one on the right is soft. The one on the left is warm. You're near the wall." The girls didn't move. They stood like statues, unsure of how to exist in a place where pain wasn't waiting. "Can we sleep inside?" the younger one asked. "Not outside?" The human nodded. "Every night. You don't sleep in dirt anymore," the older sister whispered. "What if we do something wrong?" "Then we talk about it," he replied. "No yelling, no hitting, just talking." Tears welled in the younger girl's eyes. She turned away quickly, hiding her face. The human walked to the kitchen and brought out bread, fruit, and warm soup. He placed it gently on the table. "Eat when you're ready." The girls sat down slowly, still waiting for a trap that didn't come. When the younger one lifted the spoon to her mouth, she paused. "Are we stealing?" "No," the human said gently. "This is your home now." They ate slowly at first, unsure if it was a dream, but with every bite their hands steadied. After the meal, the human brought them warm clothes. He turned his back to let them change, showing respect they had never known before. Later, when the stars came out, the sisters sat on the small porch, their backs leaned against each other, silence between them. But it was peaceful, not heavy. The human joined them and said quietly, "Fear doesn't go away in a day, but every step forward makes it smaller." The older sister finally smiled, just a little, and said, "Then today, we took our first step." The human nodded. "And tomorrow, you'll take another." That night, for the first time in their lives, the sisters slept under a roof not filled with threats, but with quiet, with calm, and with the slow breaking of fear. The sun rose slowly over the small house at the edge of the village. Its soft light touched the window where 2 sisters now slept in peace. The younger one curled tightly under a warm blanket. The older one stretched out with her arms relaxed for the first time in many years. Inside the room, it was quiet, but not the kind of silence they knew before. This was not the silence of fear or hunger or pain. This was the silence of safety. The human sat outside on the porch, sipping something warm from a cup. He didn't wake them. He knew they needed rest more than anything. When the sisters finally stirred, they looked around with sleepy eyes. The younger one blinked and whispered, "We're still here." The older one nodded slowly. It wasn't a dream. They got up carefully, not because they were afraid, but because the room still felt too soft, too unreal. When they stepped into the main room, the human greeted them with a simple smile. "Morning," he said. "You slept well?" The girls nodded, unsure of how to answer without sounding strange. "Good," he said, "because today, we do something new." Their eyes widened with uncertainty. "New?" the older one asked. The human nodded. "Not work, not punishment, just living." He gave them small bags and said, "We're going to the hills." The girls looked at each other in surprise. Hills? They had never been taken anywhere that wasn't full of shame or fear. As they walked along the path, birds flew overhead, the wind carried the smell of flowers, and their hands stayed close to the human's coat. "What's out here?" the younger sister asked. "Freedom," the human said gently, "and quiet places where you can learn to breathe again." They climbed slowly, not because the trail was hard, but because every step felt strange, like walking into a life they never thought they'd have. At the top of the hill, they reached a wide, grassy field. The sun painted golden light across the sky. The human sat down and motioned for them to do the same. "This place is mine," he said. "No one comes here but me, until today." The sisters sat beside him, eyes scanning the horizon. There were no watchers, no laughter, no shame, just sky, earth, and quiet. "Why did you bring us here?" the older one asked softly. "Because sometimes you need to see something beautiful to remember life isn't always ugly," he said. The younger one looked at a small flower blooming near her foot. She touched it gently and whispered, "It's soft." "So are you," the human replied, "and there's nothing wrong with that." They stayed there for a long time, not speaking much. The wind spoke for them. The sky offered peace. Later, the human reached into his pack and handed them fruit and bread. They ate without fear, without asking if it was allowed. As the sun began to dip, the older sister turned to him and said, "We don't know how to live like this. We only know how to survive." The human nodded. "Then I'll teach you, and one day, you'll teach others." Tears gathered in her eyes, but this time they were not from pain. They were from something new, something that felt like hope. The journey down the hill felt lighter. The sisters walked with slower steps, taking in the breeze. The younger one reached out and held the human's hand again, not because she was scared, but because she wanted to. It was not just a walk through the hills, it was the beginning of a journey, not of running away, but of walking towards something better. That evening, the house felt different, warmer, not because of fire or blankets, but because of something unseen, the kind of warmth that comes from being wanted, not just tolerated. The sisters sat quietly at the table. Their plates were full, and their hands no longer shook as they reached for food. The human joined them, not as a master, not as a savior, but as someone who simply wanted to sit with them. After the meal, he looked at them and asked, "Can I tell you a story?" The girls nodded, surprised by the question. No one had ever cared what they wanted to hear. He began, "When I was young, I was left behind too. Not by family, but by the world. I learned how cold it could be." The sisters leaned in slightly, their eyes fixed on him. "I promised myself," he continued, "if I ever saw someone else being forgotten, I would not look away." The older sister's voice was small but steady. "That's why you helped us?" The human nodded. "Yes, but I didn't just help, I chose you." The words hung in the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. The younger sister whispered, "People choose what they love." "Yes," he replied gently, "and I choose to care, no matter what the past says." There was silence for a moment, but it was soft, not heavy. Then the older girl spoke. "We want to learn, not just to eat and sleep, but to be something more." The human smiled. "Then we'll start with little things, step by step." He brought out a small wooden box. Inside were a few old books, a worn-out map, and small tools. He placed them on the table. "These are yours now," he said. "You'll use them, break them, fix them, and make mistakes, and I'll be right here while you do." The sisters touched the books carefully, like sacred objects. The younger one opened the map and asked, "Where does this road go?" "Anywhere you want it to," the human answered, "but you don't have to walk it alone anymore." The older sister looked at him seriously. "What do we call you?" He paused, then smiled softly. "You can call me what feels right to you." The younger one looked at her sister, then back at him. Her voice wavered as she said, "Can we call you Father?" The room went quiet. The human's eyes glistened. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he reached across the table and gently held their hands. "I would be honored," he whispered. The older sister blinked quickly, hiding her tears. "We've never had one before, not a real one." "You do now," he replied, "and no one can take that from you." That night, the sisters helped clean the table. They laughed softly, small giggles that hadn't been heard in years. The human watched from the doorway, not as a guardian over broken things, but as a man who had found something rare. They weren't healed completely, not yet, But healing had begun, not through magic or force, but through something simple, something powerful. Trust. The sisters prepared for bed with care, folding blankets neatly, brushing their hair with combs he had given them. As they lay down, the older one whispered, "Do you think he'll still be here tomorrow?" The younger one replied with quiet certainty, "Yes, I think he will." And for the first time in their lives, they went to sleep, not wondering who would hurt them, but dreaming of who they were becoming. Because now, they were not just survivors, they were daughters. Morning came gently to the small house. Sunlight touched the floor like a soft promise. And for the first time, the sisters woke with peace instead of fear. They dressed without being shouted at, ate breakfast without being watched like thieves. They moved through the rooms with ease, their steps light, their voices soft but rising. The human was already outside, tending to the garden. His hands were in the soil, planting seeds, not just for food, but for the life they were now growing together. The sisters stepped out quietly and watched him. The younger one spoke first. "He really likes dirt," she giggled. The older sister smiled. "He grows things, like us." The human looked up and waved. "Come here. Want to plant something today?" They rushed forward, kneeling beside him in the soil. Their fingers touched the earth, warm and full of life. "This seed," the human said, handing them a small one. "It's just like you, tiny, forgotten, but full of power." The older sister planted hers with care. Her hands still unsure but steady, the younger one pushed her seed deep, then patted the earth and whispered, "Grow strong." The human chuckled. That's all it needs, care and time. As the day passed, laughter filled the air, not loud, but real. The sisters helped clean the house, learned how to cook simple meals, and even made space on the shelf for their own things. Later, the human sat with them on the porch, watching the sky turn orange. He handed them both small wooden pendants, carved by his own hands. "These are yours," he said, "symbols of this new life." The pendants were simple, shaped like tiny suns. The sisters held them as if they were treasure. The older one asked, "What do we do with these?" "Wear them," he said, "to remember that no matter where you go, you are never alone again." They placed the pendants around their necks, and suddenly, something felt complete. A neighbor passed by, an older alien woman. She saw them sitting together and smiled gently. "Beautiful family," she said. The girls froze at the word, but the human didn't hesitate. "Yes," he replied, "that's exactly what we are." Tears filled the older sister's eyes. She looked at the human and said, "We thought we were born to carry shame." He shook his head. "You were born to carry light." That night, a quiet celebration filled the house, not with crowds or noise, but with love. The sisters baked flat cakes, the human told stories of his travels, and they all sat on the floor under a warm blanket. The younger one leaned against him, sleepy and full. "Do families always feel this soft?" He smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "The good ones do." The older sister watched the stars through the window, her voice steady now. "We want to grow, to learn everything. Can you teach us?" "Every day," the human replied. "As long as you'll listen, I'll guide you." They nodded, hearts full. Outside, the garden was still, but beneath the earth, seeds had begun their journey. Just like the sisters, growing quietly, slowly but surely, the shame that once followed them had no place here anymore. It had been replaced by warmth, purpose, and love. And in a world that once called them worthless, they now had something priceless. A home, a family not built by blood, but by choice, courage, and kindness. They had been claimed, not as a burden, but as daughters, and they had been reborn, together,